I don't know yet. When I negotiate for the first time on Sunday night with Foreign Minister Zarif, I'll have a better sense of where we are. But what I do know is that this letter was absolutely calculated directly to interfere with these negotiations. It specifically inserts itself directly to the leader of another country, saying, don't negotiate with these guys, because we're going to change this.
Secretary of State John Kerry on CBS News Face the Nation yesterday talking about that letter signed by 47 Republican senators and sent to the leadership in Iran. Our Secretary of State went on to say that the letter not only contains false information, but that it is unconstitutional. Joining us now from Newsmax Washington, John Gizzi, our senior political columnist, replete in his fedora, and staying with us, the unadorned, at least in the head department, former Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Gentlemen, I'll ask you to put on your thinking caps and your knowledge of history. Let me start with you, Gizzi. Was the letter really unconstitutional?
No, it was not unconstitutional, since the Constitution is clear that Congress shall have a hand in the sculpting of foreign policy. And I might add, members of Congress have certainly made their feelings known to world leaders over the year. In 1939, Congressman Hamilton Fish, a Republican from New York, met with the German foreign minister to suggest better relations between Washington and Berlin, and was roundly denounced by the Roosevelt administration. In the 1980s, and surely you and Pete Hoekstra can both remember this, Democrats made very clear their opposition to Ronald Reagan's agenda in foreign policy. 10 Democratic House members, including David Bonnier from Pete Hoekstra's home state of Michigan, and the then Majority Leader, Jim Wright, wrote to Comandante Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua with some harsh words about President Reagan's policy of fighting communism in the hemisphere. There's many other cases of this. Now, I don't believe so's your old man or everyone else does it. But I do say that Secretary Kerry overstepped the line when he said it's unconstitutional.
Well, gentlemen, it is worth noting that freshman Senator Tom Cotton, the youngest member of the Senate and one who fought in Iraq, spearheaded this letter. He also went on the Sunday shows to defend that decision. Let's listen to what he had to say.
The fact that President Obama doesn't see this letter as a way to get more leverage at the negotiating table just underscores that he is not negotiating for the hardest deal possible. He is negotiating a deal that is going to put Iran on the path to a bomb. Right. If not today or tomorrow, then 10 years from now.
So, Pete, do you agree with Senator Cotton?
Oh, I think absolutely. There's a way that the president could have used this letter to go to the Iranians and say, look, I need to get approval from Congress. I want Congress involved in this process. And by getting Congress involved in the agreement, it means that it will outlast this administration and we will have a permanent agreement. I think Secretary Kerry last week indicated, as did the State Department, that what the current path they're on, whatever this president negotiates, the strategy that they're using means that it will have no leverage or it will have no carry through or guarantee into the next administration. Who wants to negotiate under those kinds of circumstances?
Well, gentlemen, one of the sultans of snark, if you will, Washington Post columnist Dana Milbank, was also on Face the Nation, and he weighed in on Senator Cotton's letter in what I believe to be predictable fashion. Let's listen to this.
We had John McCain this week blaming the weather, saying it was a snowstorm and we were rushing out of town and I didn't read the fine print. And I think they're realizing, yes, Cotton is well-intentioned in doing this, but it's backfiring. You know, and if the Ayatollah is going to give out his Ayatollah's Medal of Honor this year, I think Cotton's going to be a finalist because it gives them an excuse if they pull away from the agreement now.
The Ayatollah's Medal of Honor? Pete, that's a little bit beyond just snarky, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. You know, they've really been going after Senator Cotton, saying, you know, well, he's only been in the Senate for 2 or 3 months. What is he doing leading this kind of effort? I think, as your previous guest, Fred Fleitz, indicated in his op-ed, what the Republicans did in this case was good for America. It showed leadership. It's the kind of leadership that we're expecting.
And John Gizzi, you went through a litany of historical moments where members of Congress or the Senate inserted themselves into foreign policy questions. It is worth noting, and you've probably seen the talk over the weekend, various blogs pulled it up, the reports that a senator by the name of Barack Obama reached out to Iran privately in 2008, essentially saying, hey, wait till I get to be president. There'll be a much more favorable atmosphere for negotiations between our two countries. A, do you believe that? And B, what's your reaction to that, John Gizzi?
Well, JD, as you know, I'm a reporter, not a pundit or a polemicist. So an actual reporter likes to see the evidence in front of him. If for no other reason, it's a little bit of job security. Let me read the quotes that Obama actually said and to whom at the time. But again, the precedent of suggesting wait till another party comes in has been established. We know now from the files released from the old Soviet Union that Senator Edward Kennedy, through a friend, got a message to then Soviet strongman Yuri Andropov in 1983, suggesting he come to the United States, meet with Democrats, talk to leaders in the media, and perhaps he would hear different voices than he heard from the White House at the time. Now, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right, but in politics, two wrongs sometimes make a precedent.
And the situation
isn't it true,
go ahead, Pete.
John, that President Putin did say, or President Obama did say to Putin at one time, you know, I'll have more flexibility after the election?
What he said with an open mic, and he's been burnt on that,
right,
was to Dmitry Medvedev, the president,
okay,
the hyphen between Putin's terms. Tell Vladimir that after the next election, I won't have to run again and I'll have more flexibility. That was the incident, and I believe it was one of the international economic summits.
Well, gentlemen, not only do two wrongs not make a right, what is it they say in all the commercials offering financial products? Past performance may not be indicative of future results, but of course, Pete Hoekstra, you and I, having served in the Congress as recovering members of Congress, can always point to political inconsistencies and tendencies. And certainly you're right, Pete, that indulgence that President Obama offered to Mr. Medvedev was more than passing curious, picked up as it was on an open mic. John Gizzi, we thank you for your time. Pete Hoekstra, we ask you to stay with us. We ask you to stay with us, too, as America's Forum continues after this update.